Go find another dining table. This spot is designated for kin, not for adopted girls." My sister Victoria's speech echoed throughout the sophisticated dining hall of Belmont's, a high-end Seattle eatery. Laughter erupted from the surrounding diners. My brother Kenneth, my parents, and Victoria's husband, all reacting as if it were the funniest jest they had ever heard. I stood there, clutch in hand, my face burning with shame, as other patrons turned their heads to look. The sparkling chandeliers above cast a soft illumination on the white linens and crystal glassware. Yet I felt cold internally. My identity is Rachel, and I am 27 years old. I have resided with this family for 22 years, ever since they adopted me at the age of 5. 22 years of constant reminders that I was an outsider, that I was different, that I was inferior. The sole person who ever affirmed my worth was Grandma Dorothy, my adoptive mother's mother, who sat at the edge of the table with an unusual expression on her face. "Victoria, that is enough," I stated softly, attempting to retain a measure of composure. "Oh, do not be so touchy," my mother, Patricia, interrupted, waving her well-manicured hand dismissively. "We are only teasing you. You know how Victoria behaves." I was fully aware of Victoria's behavior. At 32, she had perfected the skill of diminishing me while sustaining the pretense of family. During our formative years, she received the most desirable bedroom, the latest clothing, and the expensive university education. I was given second-hand items and attended community college. She was lauded for mediocre accomplishments, while I was criticized for achieving excellence. "Take a seat, Rachel," my father, Gregory, commanded. "You are creating a spectacle." I complied, stifling the objection that began to rise in my throat. This celebratory meal was intended to honor Victoria's most recent business transaction, a real estate purchase that my parents had helped finance. They consistently assisted Victoria when I had requested a financial loan 3 years earlier to launch my graphic design company. They had ridiculed me and advised me to be pragmatic. The evening lingered on, with conversations bypassing me, as if I were absent. Victoria boasted about her new Mercedes-Benz. Kenneth discussed his recent promotion at the financial institution. My parents shone with paternal pride, asking questions and offering accolades. When I attempted to mention the significant client I had just secured, a contract valued at $50,000, my mother quickly interrupted me. "That is pleasant, dear Kenneth. Elaborate further on your financial bonus." By the time the final course arrived, I had mentally withdrawn, enveloped by a familiar emotional numbness. This was my customary role within the family, the unwanted outsider, the recipient of their charity, the person they kept nearby to elevate their own sense of virtue. Then the server approached with the bill. My stomach sank as he positioned the leather folder directly in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What is this?" I inquired. Victoria's laughter was sharp and clear. "Oh, did we fail to mention that you are settling the bill this evening? Consider it your required contribution to the family, since you are perpetually receiving and never reciprocating." Receiving? The utterance was choked. "I have never requested anything from you. The roof over your head during childhood, the meals, the attire." Patricia enumerated the benefits on her fingers. "We provided you with everything, Rachel. The very least you can do is purchase us dinner." With trembling hands, I retrieved my credit card and placed it into the folder. The server quickly took it away, and I forced myself to maintain a smile, to sip my water, to pretend that this situation was not utterly crushing me. Victoria was already talking about their forthcoming trip to Tuscany. My parents planned to join them. No one asked if I wished to accompany them. They never did. When the server returned with my card and the transaction receipt. I signed using fingers that felt detached. 3,370 for the dubious honor of being publicly humiliated by individuals who were supposed to cherish me. Well, that was delightful, Patricia remarked, gently blotting her lips with a napkin. Same time next calendar month. Next month. They fully expected this arrangement to become a recurring obligation. I parted my lips to object, to finally declare that I had endured enough, when a different voice interrupted the background chatter. Just one moment, please. Everyone immediately fell silent. Grandma Dorothy, who had remained quiet throughout the entire meal, was now standing at her end of the table. At the age of 78, she retained an undeniable presence. Her silver hair impeccably styled, her posture rigidly upright. A certain quality in her expression caused my chest to constrict. The entire restaurant appeared to pause. Grandma Dorothy had always been distinct from the other family members. While my parents and siblings treated me as a burdensome obligation, she was the one who consistently attended my school performances, who remembered my date of birth, and who inquired about my ambitions. She was also the wealthiest person I knew, a self-made billionaire who had established a pharmaceutical business empire, starting from nothing. Recently, however, she had been more reserved, simply observing. I had noted her scrutinizing family gatherings with an intensity that made me curious about her thoughts. "Mother, what is it?" Patricia asked, a hint of annoyance entering her voice. "We were just preparing to depart. Be seated, all of you." Grandma Dorothy, his tone, carried an authority that prompted even my father to sit straighter in his chair. "I have something I intend to express, and you will all heed my words." Victoria rolled her eyes dismissively, but remained seated. Kenneth checked his cellular device beneath the table. My parents exchanged bewildered glances. Grandma Dorothy's unwavering gaze swept over each of them before settling upon me. Something registered in her eyes, perhaps sorrow or disappointment directed at everyone else. "I have been observing this family unit for many years," she began, her voice steady yet distant. "Observing how you treat Rachel, how you have always treated her." "Mother, genuinely?" Patricia protested. "This is inappropriate timing." Silence. The command was so sharp that my mother actually obeyed. "I am 78 years old, and I have dedicated the past several months to considering my ultimate legacy, and where my financial resources should be allocated after my passing." The table became utterly still. My father's eating utensil clinked against his dinner plate as he put it down. Victoria's self-satisfied look wavered. "We are all familiar with the established procedure." Grandma Dorothy continued. "The majority of my estate is designated for Patricia, subsequently to be distributed among the grandchildren. That is the stipulation within the current legally binding testament." I watched Victoria's countenance brighten with avarice. She had been relying on that future inheritance for many years, devising elaborate purchases and planning financial investments based on money she had not yet received. But I have instructed my legal counsel to draft a revised testament. Grandma Dorothy retrieved a sizable envelope from her handbag. "It was officially signed and notarized yesterday." The silence felt oppressive. "You cannot be serious about this," Kenneth stated. "You are altering your will because of what? A silly, insignificant joke." "A joke?" Grandma Dorothy's laugh sounded bitter. "I have witnessed every single one of you mock and degrade Rachel for over 20 years. I have watched you deliberately exclude her, humiliate her, and regard her as less than human. And this evening, you compelled her to pay for your excessive consumption while you found amusement in it. We were simply having light-hearted fun." Victoria attempted to justify, but her voice faltered slightly. "Fun?" Grandma Dorothy repeated the term as though it were repugnant. You consider deliberate cruelty to be entertaining. You believe that making an individual feel worthless constitutes amusement. My heart was pounding so intensely that I imagined everyone could perceive it. Grandma Dorothy slowly navigated her way around the table until she stood directly alongside me. Her hand rested gently upon my shoulder. Rachel is the sole individual within this family who has demonstrated genuine integrity, she announced. She has tirelessly worked for every single thing she possesses. She successfully established a business from the ground up without receiving any assistance from any of you. She is a kind, skilled, and highly resilient person, despite your most concerted efforts to erode her spirit. Mother, you are being overly dramatic, Gregory asserted, though his voice lacked any real conviction. Am I? Grandma Dorothy arched her eyebrows. Patricia, when was the last instance that you inquired about Rachel's life? Genuinely inquired and actively listened to her response. My mother's mouth opened and then closed without issuing a sound. Kenneth, have you ever once congratulated your sister regarding her professional accomplishments? Have you ever acknowledged her successes? My brother continued staring intently at his plate. Victoria, have you devoted even a single day to treating Rachel as a true family member instead of a mere hired helper? My sister's face flushed a deep red with a mixture of anger and acute embarrassment. Grandma Dorothy directed her gaze at each of them, her profound disappointment unmistakable. You have all failed dramatically. You took in a young girl who had experienced immense loss, and rather than extending love and support, you have spent 22 years forcing her to compensate for the fundamental kindness you demonstrably never offered. The severity of her words settled heavily over the table like a dense, smothering blanket. Other patrons had ceased pretending they weren't listening intently. Waiters paused discreetly in the distance, sensing the escalating drama. Consequently, this is the course of action that will transpire, Grandma Dorothy stated, her voice regaining its firm strength. My entire estate, every single monetary unit, every asset, every investment, is being allocated to Rachel. The resulting outburst was instantaneous. What? What did you say? Victoria shrieked, instantly leaping to her feet. You absolutely cannot legally do that. That is utterly unjust. Kenneth slammed his hand hard upon the table surface. Mother, please contemplate the gravity of what you are declaring. Patricia pleaded urgently. You are referring to billions of dollars. Rachel is not even legitimately part of this family. Stop. Grandma Dorothy's command silenced them once again. Rachel is more fundamentally family than any of you have ever managed to be. She has earned this designation, not through simple biological connection, but through the strength of her character, through being a demonstrably better human being than all of you combined. I remained frozen, entirely incapable of processing the events unfolding. Billions of dollars. Grandma Dorothy's complete financial fortune. It felt implausible, surreal, far too monumental to truly grasp. You are being emotionally manipulated, Gregory stated desperately. Rachel must have orchestrated some plot. Rachel has done nothing except manage to survive your consistent emotional abuse. Grandma Dorothy interrupted him forcefully, and that abusive period concludes tonight. She withdrew her phone and initiated a call. Thomas, it is Dorothy. Yes. Submit the new will immediately. Ensure that every aspect of it is legally ironclad. And prepare all the necessary trust documents in Rachel Ness's name. My family members' faces exhibited a spectrum of emotions, ranging from pure shock to unadulterated fury and sheer disbelief. Victoria appeared as though she might actually lose consciousness. Kenneth's face had turned a deep purple shade. My parents seemed to visibly age. A full decade within mere seconds. "This is far from over," Victoria hissed menacingly at me. "We will dispute this in court. We will relentlessly fight you legally." "Attempt it," Grandma Dorothy responded calmly. "I have personally ensured that every detail is entirely legally sound, and my full mental capacity is confirmed by a medical evaluation conducted just this morning." She had planned every single intricate detail of this event. The explosive reaction that followed was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. Victoria violently lunged across the dinner table, her face contorted with unrestrained rage. Kenneth quickly grabbed her arm, but his own palpable anger was barely kept under control. My parents remained in shocked, absolute silence, their meticulously constructed world collapsing abruptly around them. "You manipulative, deceitful wretch," Victoria snarled venomously at me. "You deliberately planned this entire scheme. You have been feigning the role of the victim the entire time." "Enough!" Grandma Dorothy stepped firmly between us. "Rachel has committed no wrongdoing. She was completely unaware of this until this exact moment. It was the absolute truth." I was still reeling, my mind struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had just occurred. Billions of dollars, Grandma Dorothy's entire estate, everything she had built over her lengthy lifespan. "Why are you taking this extreme action?" Patricia's voice cracked audibly, tears streaming down her face. "I am your own daughter, your own blood relative, and you should feel deep shame regarding the way you have conducted yourselves." Grandma Dorothy replied, her voice softening slightly, but still resolute. "I afforded you every conceivable advantage in life, Patricia. Education, countless opportunities, and parental love, and you accepted all of that and fundamentally learned nothing about essential compassion or human kindness. Instead, you successfully transmitted your specific cruelty down to your own biological children." Gregory attempted a different tactic. "Let us try to be rational. We can work through this issue. Perhaps we could divide the estate." "There is absolutely nothing left to resolve," Grandma Dorothy stated firmly. "The decision has been definitively rendered. My legal team has ensured everything is meticulously prepared. The legal trust has been officially established. Rachel will inherit everything immediately upon my passing, with immediate access to specific financial accounts commencing tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word hung suspended in the air. This was not merely a distant promise concerning the future. This was a tangible, instantaneous, and actively happening reality. Kenneth leaned forward, his voice low and overtly threatening. "You are making a monumental error. Rachel possesses no ability to manage that substantial kind of wealth. She will recklessly squander it all within a single year. Rachel successfully built a prosperous business, starting with absolutely nothing." Grandma Dorothy interjected. "She possesses superior financial accountability at age 27 than any of you have ever demonstrated. She was forced to develop it because you consistently refused to help her." I finally found my voice, although it sounded shaky and uncertain. "Grandma, I still do not fully comprehend. Why are you choosing to do this now?" She turned toward me, and her expression softened considerably. "Because I have been watching you endure suffering for long enough, my sweet darling. I am currently dying." The room seemed to momentarily tilt on its axis. "What did you say?" The word was barely audible. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I likely have 6 months, possibly less time than that," she stated with unnatural calm, but I could perceive the underlying distress beneath her composed exterior. "I received this diagnosis 3 months ago, and I have dedicated that entire time to organizing my affairs, ensuring that my legacy is bequeathed to a person who genuinely merits it." Tears immediately blurred my vision. Grandma Dorothy was facing imminent death. The only individual who had ever genuinely loved me was preparing to leave. "Oh, please do not weep, Rachel." She drew me into a tight embrace, and I inhaled her familiar scent, a comforting mix of lilac and vanilla. This is not an occasion for sadness. This is absolute justice. Surrounding us, the restaurant had become completely silent. Even the routine noise emanating from the kitchen had ceased. Everyone present was witnessing this family's dramatic disintegration in real time. "You cannot possibly be serious regarding this course of action," Patricia attempted again, desperation making her voice piercingly shrill. "Mother, please consider your own grandchildren. Consider the established family legacy." "I am considering the family legacy," Grandma Dorothy countered. "That is precisely my motivation for doing this. The family legacy should embody compassion, diligent effort, and fundamental integrity. Rachel embodies all of those virtues. The rest of you primarily embody entitlement, cruelty, and unrestrained greed." Victoria's hands were visibly shaking. "We will initiate legal proceedings. We will legally demonstrate that you are not of sound mind." "I wish you the best of luck with that," Grandma Dorothy said, her smile sharp and knowing. "I possess comprehensive medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimonial evidence from dozens of independent witnesses concerning your treatment of Rachel throughout the years. My personal lawyer has been meticulously documenting everything for many months. She had meticulously planned this entire outcome, acting with careful methodology, actively protecting me, even as her own lifespan was drastically reduced. I desperately want to leave and go home," I whispered softly, naturally. Grandma Dorothy maintained her protective arm around me. "Thomas is waiting outside with the automobile. He will transport both of us directly to my residence. We have a great deal of crucial information to discuss." As we turned to exit, Kenneth physically blocked our path. "This arrangement is profoundly unfair. She is fundamentally not one of us. Move immediately." Grandma Dorothy's voice was like ice. "Or I will instruct security personnel to physically remove you." He reluctantly stepped aside, but the intense hatred reflected in his eyes caused me to involuntarily flinch. We proceeded through the restaurant in complete silence, every single eye following our passage. The cool Seattle night air immediately struck my face as we emerged outside, and I deeply inhaled it, striving to stabilize myself emotionally. A sleek black luxury vehicle was parked waiting at the curb. Thomas, Grandma Dorothy's dedicated driver of 3 decades, opened the passenger door with a knowing, sympathetic smile. "Miss Rachel, welcome. Thomas is fully informed about everything," Grandma Dorothy told me as we settled into the rear seating area. "He has been actively assisting me in meticulously planning this for many weeks." The vehicle pulled away decisively from the restaurant establishment, leaving my family, my former family, standing motionless on the sidewalk in profound shock. Through the rear window glass, I could observe Victoria vigorously screaming something, her face twisted grotesquely with blinding rage. Kenneth was already fixated on his cellular device, presumably contacting a lawyer. My parents stood close together, appearing profoundly lost and emotionally shattered. I felt that I should have been experiencing some kind of emotion, perhaps guilt, or maybe outright fear. But all I truly felt was a weary, numb exhaustion, mixed with a peculiar, nascent sense of liberation. "Are you truly facing death?" I asked Grandma Dorothy, my voice barely audible. "Yes, I am." She gently took hold of my hand. Her skin was incredibly thin, almost like tissue paper, but her grip retained a surprising strength. "But I harbor no fear. I have successfully lived a long, complete life, Rachel. I built a financial empire. raised a family, and successfully left my lasting impression. Now, I have the opportunity to ensure that every endeavor I dedicated my life to goes directly to someone entirely worthy. I do not know if I possess the capability to manage this, I confessed openly. I possess no knowledge of how to navigate being wealthy. I do not know how to efficiently run your sprawling corporate enterprises. You will learn the necessary skills, she stated confidently. You are intelligent, exceptionally hardworking, and you possess sound intuition. And you will have an outstanding management team to offer necessary guidance. I have ensured that provision. The city's lights blurred outside the window as we were driven toward her extensive estate located in Madison Park. What exactly happens next? Next, Grandma Dorothy firmly squeezed my hand. Now, we begin the process of preparing you for your completely new life, and we will take absolute measures to ensure that your family can never inflict harm upon you ever again. The subsequent morning, I awakened inside one of Grandma Dorothy's luxurious guest rooms. For a brief moment, I was disoriented by the silk sheets and the expansive view of Lake Washington through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Then, the overwhelming memories rapidly crashed back. The restaurant scene, the exorbitant bill, the astonishing announcement, absolutely everything. My phone had been relentlessly vibrating since I had powered it back on. 43 unanswered calls originated from Victoria, 27 from my mother, and 16 from Kenneth. Dozens of text messages ranged drastically from desperate pleas to overt threats. I scrolled through them with a strange emotional detachment. You are behaving selfishly. Consider the family. Patricia. I will utterly ruin you in court. You will not see a single penny. Victoria. We urgently need to have a conversation. This entire mess can still be rectified. Gregory. Grandma is clearly not thinking rationally. Assist us in getting her mentally evaluated. Kenneth. I deliberately set the phone down and walked toward the expansive window. Grandma Dorothy's estate occupied 3 acres of premium Seattle real estate. The morning sunlight glinted brightly off the surface of the lake. Sailboats already visible, dotting the water. This property was mine now, or it soon would be. A gentle tapping sound interrupted my internal musings. Miss Rachel, breakfast is now ready, and Miss Dorothy would like to see you promptly in the study. I located Grandma Dorothy, seated behind an enormous dark mahogany desk, appearing surprisingly vigorous, despite the revelation regarding her deteriorating health the day before. Thomas stood quietly nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive tailored suit sat facing her. Rachel, this is Walter, who serves as my personal attorney, Grandma Dorothy introduced. We urgently need to review a number of critical matters. Walter immediately stood up, shaking my hand with a firm professional grip. Miss Rachel, it is a sincere pleasure. Your grandmother has consistently spoken of you in the highest regard. I took a seat, still feeling entirely enveloped within an unbelievable dream state. Walter opened a leather portfolio and began to meticulously outline the complexities of the trust, the various corporate entities, and the financial investments. Figures that seemed mathematically impossible swam dizzyingly before my eyes. $3 billion in readily accessible liquid assets, $5 billion invested in property, and various other ventures, significant stakes in major pharmaceutical companies, diverse real estate development projects, and numerous technology startups. The immediate access accounts become active today. Walter explained precisely. $5 million designated for your personal use, while the overarching trust documents are finalized. Your grandmother wanted to ensure you possessed immediate financial resources. $5 million for instant personal use. I felt a surge of vertigo. There is still more you need to know, Grandma Dorothy stated, her eyes sharp and focused. Your family will inevitably attempt to legally challenge this will. They will falsely allege undue influence, diminished mental capacity, virtually anything they can conceive of. We must be entirely prepared for that. What precise actions can they realistically take? I inquired. Walter leaned slightly forward. Legally speaking, very little substantive action. Miss Dorothy possesses ironclad documentation, affirming her sound mental state, including evaluations secured from 3 distinct independent medical professionals. The will is virtually unbreakable. However, they retain the ability to significantly complicate the process, protract it endlessly in court, and deliberately generate negative public relations. Let them attempt it, Grandma Dorothy stated firmly. I have personally been documenting their atrocious treatment of Rachel for several years. Every vicious remark, every calculated exclusion, every single incident of financial abuse. If they truly desire a court confrontation, I will decisively bury them underneath overwhelming evidence. My cellular device vibrated again. Victoria. I silenced it immediately. There is one further matter you absolutely must be aware of, Grandma Dorothy continued, and something in her tone caused me to immediately tense up. Your adoption scenario was not precisely what you have always believed it to be. The entire room seemed to suddenly pitch. What exactly do you mean by that? She smoothly pulled a substantial folder from within her desk drawer, sliding it across the surface, directly toward me. When Patricia and Gregory officially adopted you, they received a significant sum of money. Patricia and Gregory were successfully approved as your adoptive parents and were granted complete access to those financial resources. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I quickly flipped through the various papers. $750,000. And yet I had always worn second-hand clothing, was forced to attend community college on restrictive student loans, and was constantly informed that the family lacked the financial means to assist me. They squandered every cent of it. I whispered softly, seeing the meticulous account statements, lavish vacations, luxury automobiles, Victoria's expensive private school tuition, Kenneth's college savings fund. They spent my designated money on absolutely everyone except for me. Yes, Grandma Dorothy confirmed quietly. I only made this devastating discovery myself 2 years ago. I have been rigorously investigating the matter ever since then, meticulously gathering all the necessary proof. That is outright theft, Rachel. They systematically stole from a vulnerable child. The sense of betrayal pierced me far deeper than any prior cruelty. It transcended simple cruelty or overt favoritism. They had criminally profited directly from my personal tragedy, taken financial resources explicitly earmarked for my welfare, and used it lavishly to spoil their biological offspring, while continuously treating me as a financial burden. Why did you not disclose this information to me sooner? I questioned. Because I needed to achieve absolute certainty. I required all the documentation to be perfectly organized and legally verifiable. And because, she paused briefly, appearing suddenly older and more fragile, because I fully understood that the instant you became aware of the truth, there would be no possibility of turning back. Your strained relationship with them, deeply toxic as it was, would reach a definitive, complete conclusion. She was absolutely correct. Any minuscule fraction of me that had maintained hope for a future reconciliation, that had fleetingly wondered if perhaps I was merely too sensitive or overly ungrateful, definitively perished in that very instant. They had not simply been cruel individuals. They were actual criminals. What specific action should I take now? I felt overwhelmed and utterly lost. You will allow me to professionally handle it, Grandma Dorothy assumed control. Walter has already filed a civil lawsuit against Patricia and Gregory for the unlawful misappropriation of trust funds, including accrued interest over 22 years. They currently owe you an approximate total of $2.3 million. My cell phone instantly erupted with incoming calls again. This time, it was my father, Gregory. "Answer the call," Grandma Dorothy instructed. "Activate the speakerphone function. Let us hear precisely what he has to communicate." With hands that were still shaking, I accepted the incoming call. "Rachel." Gregory's voice was filled with palpable desperation. "Rachel, please. We absolutely must talk. Your grandmother is not thinking with full clarity. She appears entirely clear-headed to me," I stated, my voice sounding more steady than my internal state felt. "This entire situation is completely insane. You cannot possibly genuinely believe that you deserve her entire fortune. You have resided with us for 22 years, and now, abruptly, you turn hostile the very second that money becomes a factor." "The moment money is involved, you mean?" I repeated his loaded phrase. "Are you perhaps referring to the $750,000 in funds that you illegally took for officially adopting me? The money that you systematically spent on absolutely everyone except for me?" The word tasted intensely bitter. "Walter possesses all the necessary documentation. You criminally stole from me. Both of you were complicit." Patricia's voice then came through the phone line, sharp and shrill with burgeoning panic. "That money was specifically intended for the expense of raising you, for providing you with housing, and for feeding you adequately. You provided me with used, second-hand clothes, and forced me to entirely finance my own community college education," I retaliated. Meanwhile, Victoria received designer garments and a completely funded placement at a private university. Kenneth received a brand new car at the age of 16. I received nothing of value. "You are behaving ungratefully," Gregory attempted. "We provided you with a permanent home. You provided me with a prison," I declared firmly. The words felt powerfully potent and liberating. "You deliberately made me feel entirely worthless every single day, and you accomplished that while lavishly spending the money that was rightfully designated for my care. We will aggressively fight this legal action," Patricia threatened. "We will drag you into open court proceedings. Please proceed and do so." Grandma Dorothy quickly interjected. "I would find immense pleasure in watching you attempt to explain those financial records to a presiding judge. Explain how you illegally appropriated money intended for a grieving 5-year-old child and expended it on luxurious international vacations." The call abruptly terminated. They had suddenly hung up, likely to immediately contact their own legal representation. I felt Walter's calming hand placed on my shoulder. "Miss Rachel, I recognize this entire situation is profoundly overwhelming, but you must completely understand this essential fact. You possess all the definitive advantages here. They have absolutely no legitimate legal basis to stand upon. They will undeniably still try, regardless," I asserted. "Of course they will make the attempt," Grandma Dorothy conceded, "but they will inevitably lose the fight, and when that occurs, you will never be obligated to see them again." 3 days later, the entire narrative somehow leaked to the mass media, and I strongly suspected Victoria was the source. The explicit details regarding Grandma Dorothy's substantial will alteration had been released to the press. Billionaire disinherits biological family for adopted granddaughter. The sensational headlines prominently screamed. My phone would not cease ringing, with persistent reporters demanding official statements. I had temporarily relocated into Grandma Dorothy's spacious estate, Unable to tolerate residing in my apartment, whose address my family knew, Thomas had carefully retrieved my necessary possessions, and I was existing within a strange, unsettling bubble of opulent luxury mixed with overwhelming chaos. The general public response was sharply divided. Some individuals publicly praised Grandma Dorothy for justly rewarding moral character over mere blood relation. Others denounced me as a manipulative gold digger who had skillfully seduced an elderly woman out of her fortune. The comment sections online were brutally cruel. She must have been secretly sleeping with the old woman's lawyer, or something equally corrupt. Gold digger alert. This girl knew precisely what she was attempting to accomplish. Good for Dorothy. Family is defined by how you treat others, not blood. That adopted girl is guaranteed to exhaust billions within 1 year. Just wait and see. I attempted to disregard the comments, but the negative words deeply burrowed underneath my skin. Was my acceptance of this gift wrong? Should I have entirely refused Grandma Dorothy's generous bequest? Cease reading those negative comments immediately, Grandma Dorothy instructed, finding me hunched over my laptop computer in the library. She appeared visibly frailer than she had just days prior, the aggressive cancer clearly advancing rapidly. People will invariably harbor opinions. Allow them their fruitless talk. They are calling me absolutely terrible things. I confessed. They hurled terrible epithets at me when I successfully built my initial company, she responded, settling into the large chair positioned beside me. They claimed I was too overly aggressive, too inherently masculine, too ambitiously driven. They believed a woman could never possibly succeed within the pharmaceutical industry. I decisively proved them all wrong. She gently took my hand. Her grip was noticeably weaker now. You will also prove them definitively wrong, Rachel. Not by engaging in self-defense, but simply by continuing to be exactly the person you are. Kind, diligent, and principled. That same afternoon, Walter arrived bearing urgent news. Patricia and Gregory have officially filed legal papers to contest the will. They are officially claiming diminished mental capacity and undue influence. Allow me to see the documents, Grandma Dorothy commanded. Walter handed over the legal paperwork. I read the documents over her shoulder, my anger steadily intensifying with every printed word. They brazenly claimed that I had isolated Grandma Dorothy from her immediate family, that I had successfully manipulated a sick, elderly woman, and that I had deliberately exploited her declining mental state. This is completely absurd, I declared. I was entirely unaware of her cancer diagnosis until that very evening. We possess robust evidence proving the contrary to their claims, Walter reassured me, including consistent testimony from medical staff, trusted personal friends, and numerous business associates. They are desperate, flailing wildly for anything to hold on to. But something in Walter's hesitant expression made me intensely anxious. What is it? What critical information are you withholding from me? He exchanged a quick, meaningful glance with Grandma Dorothy. Victoria has recently employed a private investigator. They are currently delving deeply into your personal history, searching relentlessly for any scrap of information they might utilize against you. My stomach instantly plummeted. There is absolutely nothing negative to discover. We are fully aware of that fact, Grandma Dorothy stated. But they will inevitably try to fabricate something. They will twist harmless situations out of all context. Just as if on cue, my cell phone rang instantly. An unfamiliar number appeared on the display. Against my better professional judgment, I answered, "Rachel, it is truly excellent to finally make contact with you." The voice was entirely unfamiliar, overly sweet and syrupy. "I am Jennifer Cole from Seattle Scene magazine. I would love to engage in a conversation about your current relationship with Dorothy." No comment will be given, I stated, moving swiftly to terminate the call. Wait, I just have a couple of questions concerning some allegations. What allegations are you referencing? Regarding your business enterprise, there are specific questions circulating regarding the original source of your startup capital. Some people are suggesting that Dorothy secretly funded it years ago, implying that you have been meticulously planning this corporate takeover for a lengthy duration. My blood immediately ran cold. That assertion is fundamentally untrue. I successfully built my business exclusively using my own earned capital. Can you immediately provide definitive proof of that claim? Do you possess the necessary supporting documentation? I abruptly hung up the call, my hands visibly shaking. They are actively attempting to construct a specific narrative, Walter stated grimly, that you have been methodically grooming Dorothy for several years, that everything you have successfully achieved was actually built with her financial resources. But it genuinely was not her money. I possess the official loan documents, all the essential business records. We know that fact. Grandma Dorothy soothed me gently. And we will conclusively prove the truth. But Rachel, you must brace yourself fully. This situation is going to escalate and become far worse before it shows any signs of improvement. She was absolutely correct in her prediction. By that evening, social media platforms were flooded with aggressive theories. Anonymous user accounts, almost certainly operated by my family members, were rapidly spreading malicious rumors that I had failed out of community college, I had graduated with high honors, that my business was actively failing, it was presently thriving, that I had engaged in multiple illicit affairs with wealthy older men I had barely dated in years. The single cruelest rumor alleged that I had somehow orchestrated my birth parents' untimely death to gain access to their trust fund. I was only 5 years old when they died. But facts held no significance for internet trolls. I decisively closed my laptop, feeling physically ill. Miss Rachel! Thomas appeared suddenly at the library entrance. There are news reporters congregating at the front gate. Quite a substantial number of them. I walked quickly to the window that overlooked the estate's front section. News vans were parked lining the street. Cameras were pointed directly at the massive house. My previously private life was now an unwanted public spectacle. This laughing when I was deliberately not invited to her elaborate birthday party. Kenneth violently pushing me into the swimming pool during a family gathering, while everyone present laughed uproariously. Every specific instance of calculated exclusion, every piece of casual cruelty, all culminating inexorably toward this present moment. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message from an unknown number. You are going to intensely regret this entire action. We will utterly destroy you, V. Victoria was threatening me, using a disposable burner phone. I immediately took a screenshot of the message and swiftly forwarded it to Walter. Evidence. Grandma Dorothy had effectively taught me well. The following morning heralded a new, unwelcome development. Kenneth materialized unexpectedly at the estate, having somehow successfully talked his way past the security team. I encountered him in the spacious foyer, where he was actively arguing loudly with Thomas. I absolutely need to see Rachel immediately, he was insisting. Please, this is critically important. It is acceptable, Thomas, I said, even though my heart was violently racing. I will speak with him personally. Kenneth looked genuinely terrible. Unshaven, his clothing wrinkled, dark prominent circles under both eyes. He looked nothing like the highly polished banker I had grown up alongside. Rachel, please, he implored. We urgently need to rectify this disastrous situation. The entire family is completely disintegrating. The family completely disintegrated a very long time ago, I retorted. You are merely noticing that fact now, because substantial money is directly involved. That is profoundly unfair. I acknowledge that we were not consistently. I know that we potentially could have been considerably better to you. But this, he broadly gestured around the vast estate, cutting us out entirely. That is taking things far too extremely. Too extreme. My voice suddenly rose, despite my conscious attempt to remain calm. Kenneth, you intentionally shoved me into a pool when I was 12, and I nearly drowned completely, because nobody had bothered to teach me how to swim. Swimming lessons were exclusively reserved for real family. Victoria openly told everyone at my school that I was adopted because my biological parents specifically did not want me. Mom forgot my actual birthday celebration 3 consecutive years in a row. Dad explicitly told me I should be grateful for receiving mere scraps. And all of you collectively spent $750,000 that was specifically intended for my welfare, while I was forced to work 3 simultaneous jobs, just to fully pay for community college tuition. Kenneth's face went utterly white. I was entirely unaware of that specific trust fund money. I solemnly swear I knew nothing. You were unaware because you never once bothered to ask, I countered. Not a single one of you ever genuinely asked about me, about the trajectory of my life, about whether I was fundamentally okay. The words streamed forth unrestrainedly, years of accumulated pain finally finding voice. You claim you want to repair the family. There is absolutely nothing left that requires fixing. It was fundamentally broken from its inception. Rachel, please leave my house immediately. My voice was now perfectly steady, entirely cold. Get out of this house and ensure you do not ever return. You are committing a catastrophic mistake, Kenneth asserted. But there was zero conviction left in his tone. When Grandma passes away, you will be left entirely alone with no one. I was already entirely alone, I replied pointedly. At the very least, now I will possess the essential resources to construct an authentic, independent life. Thomas quietly escorted Kenneth out the door. Through the window glass, I watched my brother walk defeatedly to his car. His shoulders noticeably slumped. For a fleeting instant, just a moment, I experienced a faint twinge of something ambiguous. Not quite guilt, but a sorrowful acknowledgement of the potential life that could have been achieved had they made profoundly different choices. That same afternoon, Walter urgently called an emergency meeting. His expression was noticeably grave. Victoria's dedicated legal team has managed to locate something significant, he revealed. Or rather, they are claiming to have located something. They are officially alleging that you personally forged specific documents related to your business, specifically targeting your client contracts. They are actively attempting to portray you as fundamentally dishonest, someone fully capable of manipulating Dorothy. That is utterly insane, I stated immediately. All of my contracts are completely legitimate. We are fully aware of that fact, but they are filing a formal motion seeking to officially delay the will proceedings pending a comprehensive investigation. It is clearly a stalling tactic, but it does unfortunately hold the potential to succeed. Grandma Dorothy's hand slammed forcefully onto the desk surface, startling both Walter and me. Despite her physical frailty, the intense anger visibly lent her renewed strength. Absolutely not under any circumstances. Walter, immediately file an emergency motion to successfully expedite the process. I demand this entire matter be legally resolved before. She intentionally left the grim conclusion of her sentence unsaid. Dorothy, you require immediate rest, Walter began pleadingly. I will achieve rest only when this objective is accomplished, she snapped back fiercely. My granddaughter is currently being viciously assaulted by opportunistic vultures, masquerading deceptively as family. We terminate this legal action immediately." Walter nodded his agreement and quickly pulled out his phone, stepping away slightly to initiate immediate calls. Grandma Dorothy turned directly toward me, her eyes intensely fierce, despite the profound exhaustion clearly evident in her face. "Rachel, there is a critical task I require you to undertake for me." "Anything at all," I replied instantly. "I am scheduling a full press conference for tomorrow afternoon. I intend to disclose the absolute truth, all of it, the criminally stolen money, the prolonged emotional abuse, everything. But I urgently need you to be present there alongside me. The world needs to visually see you and hear the factual narrative directly from your own voice." Terror immediately gripped me tightly. "I cannot possibly do that. I will undoubtedly say something inappropriate. You will be absolutely perfect," she insisted firmly, "because your only responsibility will be to speak the truth. That is the only requirement necessary." That night, I barely slept again. I repeatedly rehearsed various potential statements, then discarded them completely. How is it possible to adequately summarize 22 years of continuous, agonizing pain in only a few short minutes? How do you effectively compel complete strangers to fully understand the depth of the situation? The press conference was formally scheduled for 2 p.m. the next day at Grandma Dorothy's downtown corporate office. When Thomas carefully drove us to the location, the sheer volume of media presence was overwhelming. Cameras were positioned everywhere, reporters aggressively shouting numerous questions, a sizable crowd of curious onlookers documenting the entire scene on their phones. Walter had meticulously prepared a detailed official statement, but when I gazed closely at Grandma Dorothy, truly focused upon her, I recognized the immense toll this effort was taking on her. She was actively dying, utilizing her final reserves of physical strength to vigorously fight this battle on my behalf. The designated conference room was densely packed, cameras actively rolling, lights intensely bright, the air thick with palpable anticipation. Grandma Dorothy sat calmly beside me at a long table, Walter positioned on her other side. She appeared physically small, but utterly unbreakable in spirit. "Thank you all for attending today," she commenced, her voice surprisingly powerful and clear. "I am present here today to directly address the pervasive rumors and the baseless allegations surrounding my final will and my granddaughter Rachel." She proceeded to systematically lay out every fact, the detailed documentation of years of abuse, the stolen trust fund money, the 2 decades of emotional and financial manipulation. She presented concrete bank records, formal medical evaluations, conclusively proving her full mental competence, and corroborating testimony from various independent witnesses. The presentation was devastatingly methodical and entirely irrefutable. Some individuals have suggested that Rachel somehow manipulated me, Grandma Dorothy stated, her gaze sweeping across the entire room. The factual truth is the absolute reverse. My biological family systematically manipulated her. They took a severely grieving 5-year-old child and effectively utilized her as a convenient emotional punching bag for their own deep-seated inadequacies. They criminally stole from her, constantly belittled her, and intentionally made her feel completely worthless. Despite enduring all of that relentless abuse, Rachel successfully built a life and established a thriving business. She evolved into a kind, deeply compassionate, and immensely hardworking woman. Everything that they demonstrably are not. Then, she physically gestured toward me. Rachel would now like to say a few brief words herself. My mouth immediately went dry. Every single eye in the packed room was fixed directly upon me. I could perceive the instant judgment, the raw curiosity, the deep skepticism. I carefully cleared my throat. I honestly do not know what additional words I can articulate that my grandmother has not already thoroughly expressed. I never desired this relentless public attention. I never wanted the burden of being wealthy or famous or involved in complex legal confrontations. My voice stabilized as I continued speaking. I simply desired a functional family unit that genuinely loved me. I yearned for parents who truly cared about my well-being. I desired siblings who genuinely celebrated my professional successes, instead of simply mocking them relentlessly. I merely wanted to feel that I truly belonged somewhere. I looked directly into the camera lenses. I am fully aware that some of you currently believe I am a gold digger, that I deliberately manipulated a dying woman solely for her money. But I was entirely unaware of the existence of the inheritance until that specific night in the restaurant. I was completely unaware that my grandmother was seriously ill. I knew nothing at all about the stolen trust fund money. All I knew unequivocally was that yet again, my family was publicly humiliating me and aggressively demanding that I pay the bill for the sheer privilege of being present. Tears welled up, but I forcibly pushed them back. My grandmother is granting me her substantial fortune because she possesses an unwavering belief in the person I fundamentally am, not because I ever once requested it from her, and I am fully committed to honoring that immense trust by actively being exactly the person she sees. Someone who successfully builds things, genuinely helps struggling people, and definitively refuses to engage in cruelty, simply because it is the easier option. The shouted questions immediately followed, coming fast and aggressively. Reporters screamed. Cameras flashed blindingly. But Walter skillfully fielded the queries, and Grandma Dorothy sat reassuringly beside me, her hand finding mine discreetly beneath the table, just as we were formally concluding the press event. Victoria forcefully burst through the main doors. Security personnel immediately moved to restrain her, but she was already loudly shouting hysterically, "This is all a collection of blatant lies. She has successfully brainwashed every single one of you." Victoria's makeup was badly smeared. Her expensive designer dress was heavily wrinkled. She looked genuinely unhinged and emotionally unstable. I am the authentic victim in this situation. That adopted little brat has stolen my rightful inheritance. The cameras swiftly swiveled their focus entirely toward her, capturing every single moment of her explosive meltdown. "Ms. Victoria," one reporter called out urgently, "what is your comment regarding the allegations that your parents criminally stole trust fund money specifically designated for Rachel's care? That money legally belonged to us. We earned every cent of it by raising her ungrateful posterior. You earned $750,000 simply for atrociously treating a child like human garbage." Another reporter aggressively inquired. Victoria realized her disastrous error far too late. The cameras had captured absolutely everything. Her stunning admission, her uncontrolled rage, her complete and utter lack of remorse. "Get her out of this room immediately," Walter commanded the security detail, as Victoria was forcibly escorted out, still violently screaming threats. I watched the reporters frantically typing on their cellular devices. The entire public narrative had just dramatically shifted in my favor. Grandma Dorothy gently squeezed my hand firmly. "Well," she whispered quietly, "I genuinely do not think we could have possibly orchestrated that sequence of events any better, even if we had strategically attempted to." Despite everything I was enduring, I almost managed a small smile. Victoria had decisively destroyed her own cause, and she had done it publicly, on camera for the entire world to witness. The video footage capturing Victoria's volatile meltdown went completely viral within mere hours. By that evening, it had already amassed over 10 million views. News outlets played the footage continuously, on loop, meticulously dissecting every single word spoken, every unhinged facial expression. Social media exploded with intense commentary. Did she seriously just openly admit they took money for raising an adopted kid? This entire family is profoundly toxic. Rachel deserves every penny. Victoria just completely torpedoed her own legal case in under 60 seconds. Absolutely brilliant. That look on her face when she realized what she had confessed. Priceless. The general public opinion shifted dramatically overnight. What had previously been a sharply divided conversation instantly became a monumental landslide of public support directed toward me, coupled with widespread condemnation aimed squarely at my family. Memes quickly spread. Commentary videos meticulously analyzed the situation. Legal experts publicly weighed in, all universally agreeing that Victoria's stunning on-camera admission had essentially torpedoed any faint chance they might have had of successfully contesting the will. I watched the entire development unfold, from Grandma Dorothy's study, still attempting to process the implications. Walter sat across from me, appearing palpably pleased. Their entire legal case has just decisively collapsed, he stated. Victoria's candid admission that they earned the trust fund money, specifically by raising you, is in essence a direct confession to misappropriation of funds, which perfectly complements the existing, detailed documentation we already possess. They possess absolutely no legitimate legal ground to stand upon. What subsequent actions will occur now? I inquired. Now, their various lawyers will undoubtedly attempt to initiate immediate damage control, but it is already far too late for that. The formal court hearing is scheduled in 3 days' time. I would be utterly astonished if the presiding judge does not rule entirely in our favor, immediately and decisively. He paused briefly. There is also the significant criminal aspect of this matter. The district attorney's office has already reached out to us. They are actively considering formal fraud charges against both Patricia and Gregory. Criminal charges. My adoptive parents face the real prospect of incarceration. Grandma Dorothy slowly entered the study, moving with difficulty with Thomas offering support for her arm. She had declined noticeably rapidly since the stressful press conference. The sheer effort had completely depleted her dwindling reserves, but her eyes remained intensely sharp. Do not appear so worried about their fate, she advised me. They freely made their specific choices. Now, they must inevitably face the consequences. But they are still officially my parents, I stated quietly, almost offensively. Or they were intended to be my parents. They were demonstrably never your parents, Grandma Dorothy declared firmly. True parents protect their children, genuinely love them, and consistently support them. What Patricia and Gregory executed was deliberate exploitation, pure and profoundly simple. My phone vibrated again. Another text message. But this particular one immediately caused my blood to run cold. I know your current residence now. This is definitely not over. B. I instantly showed the threat to Walter, who immediately placed a call. I am immediately filing a formal restraining order today and significantly increasing the security measures here at the estate. She is exhibiting signs of extreme desperation, Grandma Dorothy observed sagely. Desperate individuals often undertake genuinely dangerous actions. She was tragically correct. Over the course of the next 2 days, Victoria's public behavior became increasingly erratic and disturbing. She brazenly showed up at my former apartment building, screaming obscenities at the residents. She posted lengthy, rambling, increasingly unhinged rants on social media platforms. Each subsequent post, more unstable than the last, she outrageously claimed that I had utilized witchcraft to successfully manipulate Grandma Dorothy, that I was a fundamental component of some vast, shadowy conspiracy, that she was the legitimate victim of calculated elder abuse. Each desperate post only further exacerbated her already catastrophic public standing. The public watched her engage in real-time self-destruction, and any lingering shred of public sympathy that might have existed for her instantly evaporated. Kenneth attempted an entirely different approach. He appeared on a local television news program, carefully presenting himself as the highly reasonable middle ground. Look, I believe strongly that mistakes were undeniably made by both involved sides, he stated earnestly while addressing the camera. Yes, perhaps we were not as completely welcoming toward Rachel as we inherently should have been, but to totally cut out the entire biological family over simple childhood disagreements, that seems profoundly extreme. The skeptical interviewer was clearly unconvinced by his performance. Mr. Kenneth, are you fully aware that your parents personally received $750,000 explicitly intended for Rachel Essen's specialized care, which they allegedly utilized to fund your private education and that of your sister? Kenneth's carefully constructed composure immediately cracked apart. That specific money was fundamentally intended for the entire family unit. Rachel ultimately benefited from those resources too. She was forced to wear second-hand garments, while your sister was dressed in designer clothing. She was forced to take out significant student loans to attend community college, while you attended a prestigious private university on a fully funded basis. How precisely did she concretely benefit from those funds? Kenneth abruptly terminated the interview prematurely, but the devastating damage was already complete. The public saw directly through his shallow pretense. My father, Gregory, attempted yet another tactic. Desperately appealing for public sympathy, he gave a highly tearful, emotionally manipulative interview about how he had sincerely loved me like a daughter, how this entire situation was profoundly breaking his heart, how families should ultimately forgive each other's mistakes. We undeniably made mistakes, Gregory stammered, his voice visibly cracking. What parent has never made a mistake, but to be entirely cut off, to be maliciously accused of outright theft? It is utterly destroying all of us. Patricia can barely force herself out of bed. Kenneth's marriage is actively suffering. Victoria is experiencing a complete mental breakdown, all because we simply were not perfect parents. The interviewer, the very same one who had previously dismantled Kenneth's narrative, exhibited absolutely no mercy whatsoever. Mr. Gregory, you are characterizing your specific actions merely as not being perfect. But professional investigators have meticulously documented years of systemic emotional abuse, calculated financial exploitation, and the systematic exclusion of Rachel from virtually all key family activities. This behavior extends far beyond simple imperfection. That is absolutely not abuse. That is merely standard family dynamics. Every family unit experiences various issues. However, every family unit does not criminally steal $750,000 from a dependent child. The interviewer countered sharply. My father abruptly walked out too, but my mother's tactical approach proved to be the most deliberately calculated. Patricia hired a specialized PR firm and gave a meticulously crafted interview to a sympathetic journalist. She wore a deliberately simple dress, utilized minimal makeup, and positioned herself carefully in soft, flattering lighting. She strategically wept at all the most appropriate moments. I sincerely loved Rachel from the precise moment we brought her home. Patricia claimed, delicately dabbing her eyes. Nourishment, utility costs. Raising a child demands significant expense. Perhaps we should have meticulously documented every single expenditure. But we were operating as a family, not conducting a business transaction. She then looked directly into the camera lens. Rachel, if you happen to be watching this interview, please know this truth. I genuinely love you. I always have loved you. Can we please simply communicate privately, without unnecessary lawyers, without the intrusive media, just mother and daughter? I watched the entire interview, alongside Grandma Dorothy and Walter. When it concluded, I felt physically sickened. She is undeniably effective, Walter admitted honestly. This is the most sympathetic public appearance they have managed since this entire ordeal began. She is a pathological liar, I stated flatly and without emotion. She never genuinely loved me. This is merely yet another manipulation technique. I am aware of that fact. Grandma Dorothy agreed. But some susceptible people will unquestionably choose to believe her performance. The crucial question is, do you personally care about their belief? Did I truly care anymore? I pondered the question deeply. Just 1 week prior, I might have cared desperately about public perception. I would have fiercely desired everyone to know the verifiable truth, to clearly see Patricia for the manipulative person she truly was. But now, no, I declared. I no longer care what random strangers think of me. The people whose opinions genuinely matter already know the absolute truth. Grandma Dorothy smiled gently. Good girl. The actual court hearing finally arrived on a typical grey Seattle morning. The courthouse building was heavily surrounded by persistent media, vocal protesters holding signs both for and against me, and curious onlookers hoping to glimpse the unfolding drama. Walter had meticulously arranged for us to gain entry through a discreet private entrance, but I could still clearly hear the persistent noise outside. Grandma Dorothy looked physically frail, confined to her wheelchair. We had finally persuaded her to utilize one, but her spinal posture remained perfectly straight. I held her hand firmly as we entered the austere courtroom. My family was already present inside. Patricia, Gregory, Kenneth, and Victoria sat stiffly at the defendant's legal table alongside their team of expensive lawyers. Patricia maintained the fragile, sympathetic outward appearance from her earlier interview. Gregory looked emotionally exhausted and completely defeated. Kenneth actively avoided meeting my gaze. But Victoria stared intensely at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. The presiding judge, a stern woman in her 60s, named Judge Morrison, entered the room and everyone instantly rose respectfully. This session is a formal hearing regarding the last will and testament of Dorothy Hayes and the formal contest filed by Patricia Hayes and her family. Judge Morrison commenced. I have carefully reviewed all documentation submitted by both involved parties. Counsel, please present your opening statements. The family's primary lawyer spoke first, a slick, polished man named Robert, who aggressively argued that Grandma Dorothy had been subjected to undue influence, that her advanced illness had significantly impaired her judgment, and that the new will should be entirely set aside in favor of the previous legally binding version. Then, Walter calmly rose to speak. He did not engage in aggressive arguments or emotional pleading. He simply presented verified facts, bank records, unequivocally demonstrating the criminally stolen trust fund money, formal medical evaluations from 3 separate qualified doctors, confirming Grandma Dorothy's clear mental competence, corroborating testimony from various business associates, affirming her consistent mental acuity, detailed documentation, outlining the abuse I had suffered, photos, audio recordings, witness statements, and finally, Victoria's devastating viral video confession. Your Honor, Walter concluded definitively, this is fundamentally not a legal case concerning undue influence. This is a clear case concerning a woman exercising her right to leave her substantial estate to the individual who genuinely merits it, and a family consumed by rage because their designated victim has finally successfully escaped their control. Patricia's lawyer attempted to counter this narrative, but Judge Morrison instantly cut him off sharply. I have observed and read sufficient evidence, she stated firmly. The presented evidence is completely overwhelming. Miss Dorothy Hayes was undeniably of sound mental capacity when she legally executed her new will. The documentation detailing the years of abuse is extensive and highly credible, and the explicit admission by Victoria Hayes that the family earned money specifically intended for Rachel. AS Care essentially serves to confirm the allegations of egregious financial exploitation. My heart started vigorously pounding. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued without hesitation. The overtly aggressive behavior exhibited by the contesting parties throughout these legal proceedings, including the numerous threats, harassment, and intentional public defamation, only further reinforces that Miss Dorothy's decision was unequivocally correct. A family unit that genuinely loved Rachel would never have subjected her to this treatment, either before or after the significant will change. Victoria instantly sprang to her feet, unable to restrain herself. This is absolute nonsense. You cannot simply sit down immediately, Judge Morrison commanded forcefully, or I will cite you for contempt of court. Victoria reluctantly sat back down, but her raw fury was intensely palpable. I am definitively ruling in favor of the will, as it was recently executed, Judge Morrison declared solemnly. The contestation is formally dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am hereby ordering Patricia and Gregory Hayes to pay full restitution for the unlawfully misappropriated trust funds, $750,000 plus accrued interest, calculated over 22 years, totaling an approximate sum of $2.3 million. They possess precisely 90 days to render payment in full. The courtroom immediately erupted into chaos. Patricia physically collapsed in her chair, loudly sobbing uncontrollably. Gregory looked as though he had instantly aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Kenneth buried his head deeply in his hands. Victoria started screaming vile obscenities until court bailiffs forcibly escorted her out of the room. I sat utterly frozen, completely incapable of processing the fact that it was genuinely finished. We had won the legal battle completely, decisively, and irrevocably. Grandma Dorothy firmly squeezed my hand again. It is finally concluded, sweetheart. You are legally free. The media immediately swarmed us as we departed the courthouse, but Walter and Thomas quickly formed a protective barrier. I could clearly hear the shouted questions. How did I feel personally? What specific plans did I have for utilizing the immense money? Did I have a personal message for my family? But I remained silent, offering no response. I simply assisted Grandma Dorothy into the waiting car and allowed Thomas to expertly drive us away from the scene. Back at the vast estate, Grandma Dorothy was physically exhausted, but deeply satisfied. I can now achieve death happily, she declared, and the words struck me like a tangible physical blow. Do not speak those words, I whispered urgently. Please, stop. Oh, Rachel. She gently cupped my face, using her thin hands. I harbor no fear of death. I successfully witnessed justice being served. I received the assurance that my fortune, "Will I solemnly promise I will do just that," I vowed. "I will make you immensely proud of my efforts. You have already achieved that goal," she assured me. Her smile was profoundly peaceful. "You successfully survived them, Rachel. You managed to retain your kindness when they were explicitly cruel. You worked diligently when they actively attempted to destroy your spirit. You are everything I hoped you would inherently become." She passed away on a Tuesday morning while I was holding her hand, the sun streaming brightly through the window glass. Her very last words were, "Thank you immensely for being my real family." I remained beside her body for a long time afterward, deeply weeping for the magnificent woman who had ultimately saved me, who had genuinely loved me, who had gifted me a viable future, the only grandmother I had ever authentically possessed. The funeral service was highly private, attended only by myself, Thomas, Walter, and a small circle of Grandma Dorothy's closest personal friends. My biological family was pointedly not invited, although Patricia made an attempt to crash the service and was immediately turned away by security guards. In the weeks that followed, the comprehensive transfer of all assets was successfully completed. I was officially the sole heir to a staggering $8 billion financial fortune. The incomprehensible number still remained far too abstract to grasp, but I was fully determined to rigorously honor Grandma Dorothy's profound legacy. The very first action I took was establishing the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for adopted children, not because it sounded philanthropically appealing or improved my public image, but because I possessed firsthand, intimate knowledge of how many children were tragically trapped in circumstances identical to mine. The foundation would provide crucial legal representation, necessary counseling services, emergency temporary housing, and essential educational funding for adopted children actively suffering from ongoing abuse or exploitation. The second critical step I took was hiring an outstanding management team to competently oversee Grandma Dorothy's sprawling corporate entities. I was not yet fully prepared to personally run billion-dollar corporations, but I was entirely capable of learning the skills. I attended every scheduled meeting, relentlessly asked pertinent questions, and studied late into the night. Slowly, I began to genuinely understand the vast empire she had successfully constructed. My family's subsequent downfall was swift and brutally painful. Unable to pay the mandated $2.3 million in restitution, Patricia and Gregory were immediately forced to sell their opulent house, all their luxury vehicles, and every other possession of significant value. They were compelled to relocate into a tiny apartment situated in a particularly rough neighborhood. This was intensely ironic considering satisfying outcome. Her widely viewed viral meltdown had utterly destroyed every scrap of professional credibility she might have retained. Her husband immediately filed for divorce, taking their shared home and the majority of their marital assets. She had heavily invested her remaining capital into a restaurant venture that failed spectacularly and rapidly, leaving her deeply mired in debilitating debt. The private investigator she had previously hired to uncover damaging dirt on me was now actively suing her for substantial unpaid fees. She made an attempt to author a sensational tell-all book, but various publishers rejected the manuscript after meticulous fact-checkers concluded it was rife with outright falsehoods. She next attempted to launch a response 6 months following Grandma Dorothy's inevitable death. I stood inside the Foundation's brand new, purpose-built headquarters, a beautiful architectural structure in downtown Seattle, entirely dedicated to offering help to children exactly like I had been. The walls were adorned with photographs of children we had already successfully assisted, accompanied by stories detailing their escape and new beginnings. Thomas stood quietly beside me, having enthusiastically accepted a position as the Foundation's dedicated operations director. "Miss Dorothy would undoubtedly be immensely proud of your accomplishments," he remarked warmly. "I sincerely hope that is the case," I replied. My phone briefly buzzed. "Another, but I will offer you a specific deal." I was no longer viewed as the helpless victim. I was not the ridiculed gold digger or the cunning manipulator. I was simply Rachel, a woman who had successfully survived profound adversity, thrived despite it, and consciously chosen to help other individuals achieve the very same outcome. I had received information through mutual acquaintances that Victoria was currently employed in telemarketing Grace. Victoria's repeated attempts to rebuild her shattered life consistently failed, each subsequent venture collapsing immediately under the insurmountable weight of her severely tarnished reputation and her inherently poor decision-making. Patricia and Gregory spent their remaining years living in pervasive poverty and debilitating isolation, their biological children too consumed by their own escalating struggles to offer meaningful assistance. Kenneth A.'s overwhelming pride never permitted him to accept available jobs he haughtily deemed beneath his social status, keeping him perpetually teetering on the perilous edge of absolute financial ruin. They had originally constructed their entire lives upon an inherently flawed foundation of rampant entitlement and deliberate cruelty. And when that weak something genuinely beautiful, that, purely and simply, was the natural progression of justice, taking its final course,